As mentioned, today we are discussing the national systems of Australia, Germany and Russia with a focus on parental leave. In order to set the scene and convey what each country's legislators do to protect their workers, let's start with the average weekly earnings figures for our three focus countries. The average weekly earnings or average wage measure is an assessment of the financial well-being of a country's inhabitants. In Australia, the average weekly earnings index is measured by the Australian Bureau of Statistics and is used to estimate the level of average gross weekly earnings associated with employee jobs at a point in time. According to our research, German workers earn $994 a week, which is more per week on average than their Australian and Russian counterparts. However, it is important to point out that German citizens are also subject to the highest cost of living expenses of the three countries, with an average weekly spend of $895. This is substantially more than that of Australia and Russia. If we directly compare the average weekly earnings to the average cost of living expenses, we find that Australian workers have the highest disposable income when compared to German and Russian employees, equating to approximately $455 per week. So although Russian workers earn significantly less per week than Australian and German workers, when we calculate the average cost of living as a proportion of weekly salary, German workers actually end up with the least amount of disposable income of the three, spending 90% of earnings on living costs. Russia is not far behind at 81%. Now let's explore the hourly minimum wage rate legislated in each focus country and explain how it is determined. Pember and Dupre define minimum wage as an important economic and social measure which aims to reduce poverty and ensure basic human rights. They also note that the objective of minimum wage is to give workers the necessary social protection in terms of minimum permissible levels of wages. In Australia, the concept of minimum wage was first introduced in 1907 by the Commonwealth Court of Conciliation and Arbitration. Today, the Fair Work Ombudsman is responsible for reviewing and adjusting minimum wage standards within the National Workplace Relations System. The National Minimum Wage Order sets the wages for employees who are not covered by an enterprise agreement or a modern award. In contrast to Australia, minimum wage legislation in Germany is relatively new and was only voted in by the German Parliament in 2014. In July 2015, the Minimum Wage Act came into effect. This act only covers certain roles within the country, and the remainder are included as exceptions and mainly relate to apprentices and interns. According to the Labour Code of the Russian Federation 2001, there is a uniform national minimum wage fixed in federal legislation, which covers all Russian workers and is determined by the Minimum Wage Commission. The Commission uses the monthly index of agreed hourly earnings as the indicator for adjustment. So when we directly compare the hourly minimum wage figure in each country, we see that Australia's minimum hourly rate of $13.44 is substantially higher than Germany's, meaning Australian workers earn approximately $4 more per hour than their German counterparts. In semblance to our earlier findings, Russia's minimum wage rate is considerably lower than that of Australia and Germany's and equates to an hourly rate of 59 cents. Now for our feature topic of parental leave. Parental leave is an industrial mechanism which enables parents to take leave of absence from the workforce to care for their child or children. There are two types of parental leave entitlement. The first is maternity leave, which is leave afforded to mothers for the purposes of taking care of their newborn or adopted infant. And the second is paternity leave, which is the same leave granted to fathers. These leave entitlements are important as they give parents the opportunity to take time out to balance raising children with paid employment. In Australia, employees who are the primary carer of a child are entitled to 18 weeks leave paid at the national minimum wage, whilst fathers are granted 14 days of paid paternity leave. This benefit is paid by the federal government. In addition to this, employees are entitled to 12 months of unpaid parental leave if they give birth, their spouse or de facto partner gives birth, or they adopt a child under 16 years of age. The mechanism for parental leave in Germany is the Federal Childcare Benefit Act. The German system allows for 14 weeks paid maternity leave covered by the government and employer to equal 100% of the employee's average net earnings. In contrast to the other case study countries, if both the mother and father choose to take time off for the purpose of looking after a newborn, the 14 months can be freely distributed between the two of them. In Russia, a total of 20 weeks paid maternity leave is provided by the government, which can be taken 10 weeks before and 10 weeks after the birth of a child. This entitlement may be approved for other carers if the mother is absent. Russia's social service benefit equals 40% of earnings, which is calculated based on a percentage of capped earnings. After a period of parental leave, Russian parents can nominate to participate in government-sponsored vocational training or retraining skill development programs to assist their transition back into the workforce. Now let's look at some practical case studies relating to parental leave for each country.